Nuane foda kudus nga ay kauda asyute kauda nga. Abawa si daya mama ay nga tayi watiski nga. Nuane foda kudus nga ay kauda
Right, so in this video we'll be taking a look at Stable Diffusion 3 and what it can do, and also taking a look at LLAMA 3 and what it can do, and this is going to be amazing. Some of the stuff that these models can produce is pretty awesome. Now, as usual, the workflows will be available for the members in the membership area, and what I want to do is to compare both SD3 and also Meta, which is Meta's LLAMA is an amazingly powerful new model. It can also do images, but we're going to be using it both for prompting and also for images. Now I'm working inside a ComfyUI, and like I say, the ComfyUI workflows will be available for members as usual. For this video, I want to ask you guys a question, which is going to be about working with AI, working with artificial intelligence. Are you yet working with artificial intelligence? Do you plan to work with AI? Is it part of your job yet, even if you're just using an app? And what sort of stuff are you doing and using it for? So I'm interested in that, and I'm also interested what sort of issues. Is it working well? How is it working? How is it coming along? So I'll be discussing some of the things that I've encountered over the last 6 months or so, and some of the problems I've had, and what sort of things I'll be doing with the AI to change things up. So we've got workflow with SD3 as the model. I'm going to be putting in the different prompts, which are manufactured inside of Grok, but using LLAMA. And I asked it to produce a bunch of sample prompts. So with this one, we have a futuristic skyscape, neon skyscrapers, robots, holograms, rain, futurism, okay, sci-fi, and the composition. The cityscape should be central focus with neon lights and holograms illuminating the dark sky and robots and skyscrapers in the background. Okay, and we're going for a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is something obviously very relevant given that we are looking at a YouTube video. That looks awesome. And let's see what Meta actually produced. So here we have Meta, exactly the same prompt, and it's produced the skyscrape here. It's produced the cityscape, and we've got some skyscrapers, we've got futuristic feeling to it, we've got neon lights. So it's got most of the stuff that I got there, and I don't know exactly what it's doing in terms of the prompting, because I've prompted it using a specific command that says create a prompt, and it seems to have formatted the prompt in its own way. Let's take a look at this one. This one looks very good. I like the composition with the looking down on the city block, and all of them have this stupid sign here. Let's take a look at the robot. This is pretty fierce. You've got the huge robot in the middle there. So it's got a sense of imagination. It's got the Iron Man beam, which all robots need to have, that sort of, the killer laser just to destroy anything that upsets them. We've got lots of cars and little people there. And let's see the final one. This one is similar to the other one, but the landscape is a little bit, it's got a slightly different composition. So overall, very impressed. Let's take a look at a previous one that I did. This one is a mystical dragon landscape format. So obviously it can't do landscape format. It's always going to be 1-to-1 square. And we wanted ancient ruins, treasure, scales, wings, fire. We've got the fire going on, random places, and I would say we've got nice wings, we've got very nice scales, lots of detail. So obviously with this company, with Meta, they do a lot of very good stuff. Okay, that's not good. They do a lot of very good stuff in terms of open source models, and this is just another example of a really nice open source model. So we can see just one at the moment. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's teething problems. So this is another one here for the dragon. Now the dragons look really good, but they could be, they have a comic book feel. The original prompt was a mystical dragon, keywords, ancient ruins, treasure, scales, wings, fire, with an epic mood, excitement style, fantasy inspired, composition, and it's given us something that looks a little bit comic booky, not that epic, but the detail is fantastic. And with SD3, what we got was this epic looking image. I felt this was more artistic looking, with the fire, just everything engulfed in fire. We've got the treasure chest there. We've got the dragon as the central theme, and we've got the ancient ruins in the background. So I felt this understood the prompt really well, and I felt it produced a more artistic rendering. But I didn't give it exactly a style like painting or photorealistic. So I think we could maybe do that. Maybe say style, photorealistic, fantasy inspired. Okay, that created this image here. It's not that different, but I would say aesthetically this one is maybe slightly better than the previous one. So with better, we've got this here. This is looking good. I would say just a little bit more photorealistic. It was already fairly photorealistic. But we can see here, I love the way the dragon is just resting on top of the chest, sort of protecting it. You can see the ancient ruins in the back there. This one as well just looks fantastic. A little bit of detail, very interesting detail with the rocks in the front, and another very good image there. So you get 4 images to choose from, and as long as everything's working fine, you can actually get quite good looking images in all 4 of them. This is very different from Google, Gemini, Google. This is good. Gemini Google is just, whoa. I think the less I say, the better. Now we've changed the subject again. So there wasn't another prompt on mermaids, but I'm sure we'd have had problems with mermaids because sometimes the subject matter can be a little bit provocative. So here we've got a steampunk airship, gears, propellers, steam, clouds, wings, industrial tone, adventure, mood, steampunk style. And the airship should be central focus with gears and propellers visible and clouds and steam rising from the background. So we've got the clouds and the stream rising from the background. It's not the most convincing. It's not the most convincing steampunk airship that I've ever seen. However, we can check. Let's just zoom in a little bit. I like the fact that it's given me this airship with the landscape format. It's correctly formatted, and there's nothing that looks weird about the format. It looks like it's created a landscape image without any unusual stretching, which is part of the problem you sometimes get with Stable Diffusion XL. And with Meta, we've got these 4 images. They all look fantastic. But the images, we definitely have a crop going on here. And the crop is definitely taking out some of the important detail or some useful detail in the image. This one looks really nice. And I also think this one here, I think was probably the most satisfactory one with the crop is not quite as awkward. It would be nice if this could have been in 16:9 format. I think maybe I'll try to tell it 16:9 format because I did tell it landscape format in the past, and that doesn't seem to have actually done anything useful. So let's try this one let's tell it 16:9 image format. And we did another one inside of Stable Diffusion 3, and we've got a really nice image, maybe a lack of contrast, but we did ask for steam and clouds, and it's given us plenty of steam and clouds. Aesthetically, I don't think this works quite as well, but I like the composition a little bit better with the way this is designed, the overall shape. However, let's see if we've got landscape format. So we've got 4 images, all of them square, and I don't think it's capable of doing landscape, no matter how maybe there's some sort of secret code somewhere. Maybe there's some secret instruction you can give it to get it to do landscape. I mean, there's a big animate button here, which obviously looks good, but it does seem to take quite a long time. So all of these look good, but I think the composition just being limited to square does limit this quite a bit. I think it limits the utility of the images quite a bit. So we've got a new prompt. This one is that's looking beautiful. A ghostly forest, trees, mist, fog, lanterns, spirits, spooky, ominous, gothic, and the forest should be central, etc., etc. Lanterns and other stuff visible. Wow, that looks fantastic. I mean, that is so cool. That is so cool. I mean, this is what you want in a landscape image. You want something where there's a little bit of space, something that you could maybe work with to if you want to do compositions with images. Sometimes you want there to be a little bit of space either at the sides or at the center. It's given us this kind of mysterious looking area in the center here, and the lanterns looking good as well. And inside of this guy here, we've got slightly more, let me just bring it up, got a slightly more comic book looking feel to this. I'm getting this theme that this one tends to produce images that are slightly less realistic, slightly less, I don't know, it's maybe, the word doesn't come to me, but it's, I wouldn't say hackneyed, but there's a certain thing that you imagine when you hear a description. And this one seems to be like the comic book or the game version of it. If you were designing a game, maybe you would design a spooky forest looking like this. It looks fantastic, lots of color, but it's not quite spooky, is it? Maybe with this one, where we've got these little spirits poking out, or that's very creative. I think these little spirits poking out of the tree, out of the hollows in the tree, that looks pretty creative, and I like the look of that. So both of them are good, but I think, I don't know, I think the flexibility of SD3 is great. I think this one here could do with a bit of flexibility, with a little bit of ability to do landscape and portrait as well. But we've only just looked at the portrait, or sorry, the landscape inside of Stable Diffusion. You can do different aspect ratios. So you can do, let's see, all of these aspect ratios. Let's try 21:9 and let's see what that can do. And it is pretty fast for an API. I think we've lost some resolution here. I think we've lost a little bit of detail. It looks awesome, but there's not quite as much detail as there was before, and it's still about 1 megapixel wide. So certainly with a stable cascade, I can get things that are 4 megapixels. I can get 9 megapixels quite easily. Sometimes pretty good looking images at 9 megapixels. This one is still limited to 1 megapixel, and there is an upscaler, but the upscaler is about 25 cents or 25 cents for each use, which is quite a bit. Okay, so I set up a different set of prompts as well for something a little bit more romantic, and this one is a ballroom scene. I've also put it at 1:1, which is probably the aspect ratio at which this produces the best quality images. So at 1:1, the image quality is awesome. There's no way that I can find of changing the number of steps that you can run. I guess that's something that Stability Control over the API. And if we all look at this, this is Meta. Meta is awesome. So let's let this download, and that's looking very good. I would say maybe Stability SD3 is a little bit more photorealistic, but this is looking good. And this one looks almost as good as the one from Stable Diffusion. That looks awesome. That looks really, really cool. I'm not sure exactly how we get rid of the little sign there. That seems to be a permanent part of how it handles things. And this one looks cool as well. So they're both very good, and maybe we should do one portrait, just one sort of face portrait. So I've asked Meta AI for a face portrait for a detective who wears a deerstalker cap. Let's see if it can do an image based on this. Yes, create the image. Let me just copy this for Stability, so I don't have to give it the special command. I can just say, yes, create the image. Awesome. It's very quick, and Stability AI's API is also very quick. Now, as you can see there, I think the quality of both of these are very good. I think the quality does suffer a little bit when you go to the very wide angle images, when you go to the 21:9, but I suspect some images at that level probably work very well. Let's look at the prompt and see why we got that weird image. So we've got Victorian detective, deerstalker cap, magnifying glass, mustache, piercing eyes, top coat. A close-up portrait of a detective's face with a deerstalker cap prominent on his head, a magnifying glass held up to his eye, and a thoughtful expression. His mustache is neatly trimmed, and his piercing eyes seem to be scrutinizing every detail. He wears a top coat and giving off an air of professionalism and authority. Okay, so I think the top coat was unnecessary because it just creates confusion as to whether it's a face portrait or not. So that wasn't very good. But I can see now why the magnifying glass is held up to his eye. It's held up inside the flat cap. So it's very strange sometimes with Stable Diffusion. Also with Stable Cascade, it struggles with things like magnifying glasses. And let's try again. It struggles with things like magnifying glasses. It struggles with things like pipes. If you try to tell it someone is smoking a pipe, it produces absurd results sometimes. And with this one, it's a little bit better. It's a little bit better. Again, we don't have the Deerstalker. I don't know if that's a Deerstalker hat. I don't know exactly how they define Deerstalker, but it doesn't look like a Deerstalker to me. But we've got the magnifying glass being held by the hand there. It looks like an unfinished painting, which is a really nice style. And this one is a bit more realistic, a little bit more useful. I would have liked a little bit more detail in the background. Let's go to Meta and see what Meta did. Whoa, 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 whoa. This is awesome. So you can see that it's a bit more photorealistic this time than with the Deerstalker hat. Seems a bit more realistic. The hands and fingers look good as well. Let's go and check this out. This one is pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. Not quite as high resolution as Stable Cascade, but pretty damn good. It's holding the pen in the right way as well. That's pretty amazing. And what about this one? Again, it's holding the pen in exactly the right way. There's an odd looking pen. And I think that's a Deerstalker hat. I think it's actually got the hat right as well. So that's pretty awesome. I think this is a very good AI. Now, I said I'll talk a bit about some of the problems I've had with AI. I use AI quite a lot, and this is an AI called ChatGPT with DALL-E 3. You can see it produces amazing quality images, and in some cases the image quality is better even than what we're seeing today. For instance, with these mechanical mice, it produces awesome looking organisms, and it just has a fantastic ability to style images and to create a lot of detail. This is an area where some other models, generally speaking, do struggle. But I've had problems because I was thinking possibly I could start moving to Stable Diffusion 3 rather than using this model, because I find sometimes, particularly when dealing with 16:9 aspect ratios, it doesn't give me exactly the images I want. So I've done quite a lot over the last 6 months. I've been using it. It's about $20 a month, and I've used it less and less over time. And part of the problem has been it hasn't really produced quality images of the sort that I need. Now, this is a conversation I had with ChatGPT and DALL-E 3 from quite a long time ago. And what I was trying to do was to create a fairy, just to create a fairy with a sort of whimsical environment. So it'll be like something like this, where the fairy is flying along what looks like a runway. So you've got the little lights like the landing strips of a runway, and the fairy is supposed to be gliding along like it's taking off. And if you look on the right there, you can see some more recent examples of what I managed to get using the software, using this particular model. Now, DALL-E 3 came out 6 months ago. It became available 6 months ago. What I found was that there were problems in the way that it rendered images. So with this image here, the fairy looks fantastic. The background looks awesome. We've got the landscape format. We've got the 16:9 format, but we haven't got the wings in the right orientation. The wings are always behind the fairy, even when the fairy is facing away from us. And this was a consistent problem. I could not get it to get the fairy to have the wings in the right orientation. And I had a conversation, which sometimes I used to do this with this particular software. The conversation went on for quite some time, and I managed to get gradually improvement. You can imagine how much effort it took to prompt for all of what we're seeing here. It took a long time, and after a huge number of different iterations. And in those days, you could get 2 images produced at the same time. So you could choose one of 2 images, and occasionally you got something that looked right. So this one here, it's a square format. I wanted landscape, but it's a square format, and it looks, broadly speaking, what I was looking for. Now with this one, the problem here probably was that the fairy was a little bit too far away. And we've got a sort of funny looking foot. We've got the face doesn't look too good, and the trees were just way too huge. I wanted something that looked a lot more cozy. So I had a very long conversation, and you can do this with ChatGPT. Sometimes it puts things in. You can have a portrait. you can have landscape, and it quite often confuses portrait and landscape. And overall, the quality of the images was awesome. But in order to get what I wanted, I had to prompt and to keep on prompting until eventually I was getting the kinds of images that I thought were doing what I wanted them to do. So I wanted to get a fairy as if flying on a runway. And I wanted that to be the exact image that I got. And I didn't want huge, ugly trees in the background. It was a very specific thing I was looking for. And maybe around, I don't know, maybe the third day of prompting, I got something that started to look like this, which looks pretty good for me. It looks pretty good. It looks photorealistic. We no longer have a fairy, we've got a flight attendant, but that was a decision that I made. We've got everything that's looking good. And some of these images I shared over at Instagram. Now, the problems I was having quite a lot of the time was that the faces looked weird. The hands looked a little bit odd. So in the end, I ended up with a result that was like a compromise. Now, you need to understand, before running all of those prompts, what I was getting was this type of fairy. This is the kind of thing you can get inside of Bing Chat. It's not very good. It's very formula. It's very formulaic. The faces look weird, and you really kind of need to understand how the software works. Almost all the time, the faces or the fingers look weird. So you kind of need to prompt it so that it looks good, especially if you're not someone who's got very good drawing skills, and you can maybe alter it yourself. Some people just use it as an inspiration. Whereas for me, I wanted it to be the final product. So I continued working with it, and I'll show you the results that I got in the end. And here we are. This is one of the images that I created, which I felt did the trick. It captured the mood that I wanted, and it's got the fairy coming in. We've managed to eliminate problems with the face by giving it glasses, and we've reduced problems with the hands by giving it a rose to hold, which just fixes a whole lot of problems. The atmosphere looks fantastic, and we've got the fairy kind of large in the screen because I've said she's coming into land. She's going to hand someone a rose. So I worked with it a lot in order to get this type of image. And also there was some text, and the results were okay in terms of the text. We can work with that inside of Photoshop or something. It's not a huge problem. But the problem is the amount of time it takes to get something good. It can be a huge amount of time. And the biggest problem is that this, unfortunately, ChatGPT has a tendency to lose some of these conversations. So some of the conversations have ended up being missing. And I've contacted OpenAI a number of times saying, hey, what happened to the missing conversations? And they can't tell me. They haven't actually responded. So that was like when I was considering, should I move to SD3? I'm having these problems with missing results and not getting any support from OpenAI. And it's definitely tilted me in the direction of wanting to do these things on my own machine, having the images. Now you can download these, but I don't want to download every single image. A lot of them are not going to be usable. But I do not want to lose the conversations as well. But it does seem the conversations maybe just disappear from time to time. And from what I can tell, about a third of the conversations I had seem to either be missing or they're just impossible to find. And that's a real problem because you spend quite a lot of time telling the software what exactly you want. And at the end of the day, you can say to the software, look, can you just create something whimsical and new based on what we've discussed so far? And then, yes, create that image. And it's going to use maybe a conversation that lasted a day, maybe 2 days to create something new, something. Okay, so it wasn't able to create the image on this occasion, but most of the time, I don't know, it looks like it's still creating something, but most of the time you can tell it to create something based on a conversation. The conversation could have gone on for hours and it remembers that. And so these conversations end up being an important part of your contribution to what the software does and what it produces. So yeah, so usually you can create something, but on this occasion it seems to be struggling. and it's telling me, look, you can create an image using something like DALL-E by OpenAI. So I don't know what's happened there. It's maybe that this particular long conversation, I did ask it to produce something based on what we had produced before, but give it a futuristic feel. You can see some of the images that it created here, which are these fantastic looking fairy tale images with very futuristic drones and who knows what else is going on. But on this occasion, it kind of failed. And normally that's not a huge problem. You can come back the next day, but not being able to find the conversations themselves is a real showstopper, because you can't actually do anything with the conversations, and you end up losing out. You can't use the logic again. You haven't got access to exactly the flow, the logic, the development that you followed when you were developing a final product, a final image. You can't reuse that. And not being able to find the images, not having any assistance from OpenAI has been a real problem. So I'm looking, if at all possible, to move over to Stable Diffusion 3. And because the images, everything's stored locally, I've got access to the prompts, I can reuse them. That is a lot safer. I think with this particular workflow, if you use it maybe once a month or once a week, it's fine. But if you're using it 10 times a day to create images or to do creative stuff, it ends up being a little bit hazardous. That's how I would describe it. So that's the problem I've got. And I think the SD3, with its improved features, improved ability to do landscape and portrait images, might just turn out to be the ideal solution for the time being. Maybe once the OpenAI service has improved, maybe I'll take a look again at coming back here. Maybe sometime when Sora becomes available, I might restart the account.